All right, let's get started. We're running behind throughout the entire day. So welcome to Govern Your Azure Environment through Azure Policy. My name is Joseph. I'm the Group Program Manager for the Azure Governance Platform. So what is governance? You have a need to govern your Azure environment if you have multiple engineering teams running in your environment, or you have multiple subscriptions in your environment where these teams deploy and operate in. And you also have a need to standardize or enforce how the cloud resources in those subscriptions are configured due to either regulatory compliance requirement, cost control requirements, security, or design consistency. These are all reasons for which you want to basically maintain a standard convention for your resource configuration across a large number of subscriptions for multiple teams. Okay, and if you're in that situation, you're in the right session. So when you're in that situation, what is the traditional approach in which people handle this problem? Well, a lot of times, the central cloud engineering team that owns the tenant, right, and hands out all the subscriptions to the application team, they actually block the application team from having direct access from the cloud environment, taking away the API access, portal access, or CLI access, and basically put in another shim in the middle. Either they develop their own control plane, or they basically use a third-party tool, some kind of cloud management platform provider to act as a third party to maintain that control. The problem with that is you take away the direct access that the DevOps team have to the cloud, and they lose agility. They lose access to the latest innovation that comes from Azure. So the way we want to basically provide control to you is through delivering control that is built right into the platform itself. So when you are the central cloud engineering team, you can actually define your intent on what your control policies are, put that right into the platform, and the DevOps team continues to have direct access to all of the resources in Azure. But when they violate your policy, that's when the policy engine is going to step in and basically take control and enforce the convention that you have specified according to your policy. So this is basically what policy does in general. It helps you enforce the resources configuration according to your intent. It also provides you a view of compliance across all of your environment so that you would know whether all of your resources are compliant to the policy you've defined or they're not, right? And the reasons why. The second value proposition, which is really important, is to allow you to apply these policies at scale. Okay, we made it really easy for you to apply it across very large number of subscriptions and be able to view these compliance at a roll-up state and basically go drill back down into the individual subscription and resources really quickly. So being able to do that at scale is really important. And finally, policy has built-in remediation capabilities. We're going to talk about that a little bit later through an expression called deploy if not exist. So it will allow you to actually deploy a ARM template if a particular resource configuration is not done according to the way you have specified. Okay. So let's take a quick look at what policy looks like in the demo. So what you're looking at right now is the Policy Center view in the Azure portal. To find the Policy Center is really easy. Just go to search in the portal search and just type policy. Right, and you'll find Policy Center right there. This will open up the Policy Center, and we've got a really great getting started experience that will help guide you through how to use policy from day zero. From the overview page, you'll be able to see all of your policies and policy sets, what we call initiative, which is collection of policies that is applied to a particular environment. So you can see which policies are not compliant, and you can go into it pretty quickly. Right? In this case, this is a collection of policies, what we call policy initiative. And I got a set of about 6 policies in here. all tag policy, which basically says, hey, we require a deployment stage tag, cost code, business owner, the composite app, the workload that is running inside a VM, and what role does the VM runs in, right? So these are all required tags. And I got a couple of resources in here that are not compliant to this policy. So if I go into the deployment stage policy, I can see that I have 3 resources in this environment, right, that are non-compliant. I have a key vault resource that is missing the deployment tag. I got a resource group that is also missing a deployment tag. And I also got some alert rules that is not configured properly as well. So that's how you use compliance. Now let's take a look at an actual policy definition to see how the language of the policy is defined. So we're going to definition in the menu here. You can see here are all the definitions that are listed in your environment. And we have a number of built-in policies that were provided out of the box. And obviously, you can define your own. So we're going to look at one of the built-in policies that we have in our environment, which enforces the type of VM SKUs you're allowed to deploy in your subscriptions. So I'm going to type SKU. So I got 2 policies here. One is enforcing storage SKUs. The other one VM SKUs. So I'm going to look at the VM SKUs policy. I'm going to view definition. And this is the expression that is governing what sort of VM SKU is allowed. So let's take a look at it. All policies start with a very basic if-then statement. Okay. The if statement basically determines the condition in which the policy would be violated. So in this case, we're looking at all resources. We're looking at any resources that are of type virtual machines, and that it has the field SKU name in there. And when it's not, this value does not match one of the parameters that is specified for the policy, which is the list of allowed SKU, then we want to deny the request to actually deploy that virtual machine, okay? So when you actually assign the policy, you'll go to the assignment view, and you click on assign policy. Actually, I already got one created in here, so let's look at the SKU again. So I have assigned the policy that we have looked at the definition earlier to the subscription of Contoso ID demo and the resource group A-management, okay? And we look at the parameters that we have specified that says is the allowed SKU in here. You can see that we're allowed all of the A series and B series machines in here, but not any of the other SKUs, okay? And that is why when I name the assignment, I call it allow VM SKUs A and B series SKUs only, okay? So notice the difference there. You have a policy that can be applied to many different environments, and you can specify parameters for each of the different environments. And you can name the assignment according to the parameters and the setting in which you're applying into that particular scope, right? In this case, a resource group. Now let's see how it would take effect. So I filled in the request to create a VM in this case. And so I'm creating it in the Contoso ID demo subscription. And I'm going to use the resource group A-management. Okay. Click OK. And I'm going to choose the SKU size of a D series machine. Okay. Which is not allowed, right? So we'll see what happens. Okay. So now we're running a validation of the settings that you have applied. Before you're actually allowed to even create and deploy the VM, the policy engine blocked the creation of this virtual machine, indicating that you have violated this particular policies because of the D-series SKUs in your environment, right? And it will act consistently whether you do this through the REST API, ARM REST API directly, through PowerShell or CLI, okay? So that's the quick demo for policy. Let's go back to the slides. So let's take a look behind the scene how this works, okay? Now, Azure Resource Manager is the centralized control plane for Azure, okay? All of the requests, regardless of what form it takes, has to get through ARM before resources can be deployed or changed, okay? Whether it's done through a user or done through code. Now, the policy engine that we have built is strategically tucked right behind the ARM control plane, so that all of the resources that go through the ARM control plane has to evaluate through all of the policies that you have in your environment before the resource request would take place. As we have seen earlier in the demo, the policies are declarative, so hopefully that would be much more easier to define than writing a lot of scripts or code. The policies are always on, okay? So any changes that come through ARM, basically those policies will get evaluated, but we also run it on a periodic basis, just in case you have the situation where you have applied a new set of policies and you have a set of existing resources already there. So we'll run the existing policies again against all of your resources to tell you whether those resources are compliant or not. Okay. And we're also building an on-demand capability so that you can basically assess all of your policies very quickly on an on-demand basis. It's going to be coming this fall, late fall this year. Okay, so if a user is trying to submit a new resource request, that will get through ARM, and it will get stopped right at the policy engine layer, where it's going to get evaluated across all of the policies that we have. And if there's one or more policies in which the resource configuration has violated against, that request will get dropped, and you'll get an error back. Okay. But if the request is fully compliant to all of the policies, that will result in a resource deployment. It's that simple. And again, you know, we run all of the policies on a periodic basis, which then tells you whether all of your existing resources are compliant or not compliant. To summarize, this is basically the overview of what the policy language looks like. We have a basic if-then statement, and we offer a number of logical operators, which includes all of or any of. This is basically and or. You have negation support. In the then statement, which is basically the action, or what we call effect, we support a number of expressions, which includes denying the request that is coming in, right? That will stop the request. Or you can simply audit the request, right? Which wouldn't block the request that comes in, but will tell you whether it's compliant or not. Now, a lot of times when you're developing a new policy against a large existing environment, you probably want to start with an audit policy first. Otherwise, if you put out a denied policy, all of your teams is going to be affected, and you're going to be getting a lot of angry calls to say, like, why are you know, what happened to my environment? How come I can't do anything in there, right? We got two new capabilities that has just been released this past few months, which is called audit if not exist and deploy if not exist. Now, these if not exist expression allows you to look at a condition where, say, you want to ensure you have proper monitoring in place for all of your different resource type. Say virtual network, right? Any location in which you have a virtual network resource deployed, you always want a corresponding net watcher to be deployed there to be monitoring that those virtual network resources at the same time. So what you can do is that you can say, hey, I want to look at a policy. If the type is equals to virtual network, then I want to do an audit if not exist. In the existing clause, I want to look for net watcher in that same location. And if it's not there, right, audit it for me, right? And deploy if not exist will actually then deploy it for you, the NetWatcher resource, and have that configured to then monitor the resource in the same place. And that's remediation. That's the remediation capability that we offer at this point right now. So here's a simple example of another policy that enforces tags. So in this case, you can see that this policy actually is not resource type specific. I never specified any resource type statement in here. All that I'm saying is that for any resources where the tag field does not contain a cost center tag, deny the creation, right? So it's very powerful. You can say that all my resources, regardless VM, storage, network, or whatever, right? If it doesn't have a cost center tag in there, deny the creation of that, okay? And this is a really great way to help you organize your resources according to cost center, so you can do better billing and cost management reporting. Here's an example where you can enforce a naming convention. So in this case, you can specify a prefix and also a suffix for all of your resources. Another great way you can do this is you can actually look up references of a container. So if you let all of your users create their resource group according to a certain naming convention, you can then take the name of the resource group and apply it to the resource themselves to make sure that they're named consistently, right? In the case where you are basically regulating all of your resources according to the resource group which represents the application, so they can be named consistently that way. Now, this is a policy where I was showing earlier, where I was enforcing the SKUs of the virtual machines. But in this case, I have basically add in all of the parameter in a static fashion. Now, we want to apply parameter. What you would do is, in the field right here, you'll switch out the actual value and basically put in parameters. And then in the top, you can then specify the name of the parameter, which is called list of all allowed SKU, and it's an array of value. Okay, so these parameters are strongly typed, and then you can use that to then apply to your environment. Let me switch back to the demo and show you a couple of places where you can get access to some of the built-in policies that we already have in place. Gotta log in again. Okay, so if you just basically search for Azure policies templates, will lead you to the Azure documentation for policy, which, by the way, is really great. You basically find all the information that you need inside the Azure policy documentation related to policy. But in there, we got a list of policies in here that are actually all built in. But you can also look at the templates for some of the built-in ones, and we have some that are not added to the environment out of the box. But you can then basically go in there and basically copy that and deploy it to your environment directly. Okay, so all of the definition is provided there with a full explanation of what they are doing. We also have a larger set of policy in GitHub. So if you go to GitHub, Azure/Azure-policy, you'll find a large number of policies in here related to different resource type, from compute to network to SQL, etc. Okay. And so that's our policy repository. Now, one other thing that I want to quickly show you is the concept of management group. Okay. Now, this is a key construct to allow you to apply policy to a large number of subscriptions. Management group right now is in preview, and it is a new container concept that sits on top of subscriptions. Okay. So basically, you would use management group to model your organization hierarchy. So let's say you have you work for the finance IT department within your enterprise environment. And within finance IT, you have a number of divisions in there: corporate accounting, tax, capital market, treasury, etc. And each of those departments have their own sets of applications. What you can do is that you can create management groups for each of those departments right? And then put your subscriptions underneath those management groups so that they're organized according to your management group hierarchy. Now, you can use this for RBAC inheritance. So you can apply a user role through management group, and it will get inherited down. You can use it for cost management purposes, right? So CloudN, which we have acquired and announced last year at Ignite, which is free for you to use, by the way, will also be able to read management group, right, and allow you to organize cost allocation based on management group. But you can also use it for policy assignment. So you can target policy at the management group level. And inside a management group, you may have like maybe 10 or to 100 subscriptions. And all you need to do is assign the policy once. And that policy is going to get enforced down to all of your subscriptions. Now, the beauty of this is that the subscription owner cannot override the policy when they apply at the management group level. Right now, management group subscription is basically a top-level container. So typically, if you apply a policy there, the subscription owner can actually go in and remove it themselves. But with management group, this is now can truly be enforced in the right way. Okay. So a visual illustration is that if you have many subscriptions today, without management group, you will have to apply policies individually against all the subscriptions. Now with management group, you only need to apply it once at the top. Okay. Now let me give you a quick view of what that looks like in the portal. If you search for management group in portal search, you'll find a management group preview blade inside the Azure portal, which will open up this experience for you. Okay, so this is publicly available. You can test this out today. Now, I have already spent time to create a full-blown hierarchy in this environment. So you can see that I have a hierarchy in here, and the management group contains a number of different subscriptions in here. Okay. Now, when I switch over to the policy view, when I assign a policy, and if I click on the scope in here, you can see that the management group hierarchy is fully reflected in the assignment hierarchy. So I can say that I want to apply the policy right at the top level in here for Contoso root, which will apply to all the subscription that is contained within this tree of hierarchy, right? And that way you can then apply policy very easily across a large number of subscriptions. And I think that's all I have today. Thank you very much. So.